After some time, we returned to find our young friend, the bullfrog, terrorizing flies near a pond by the circus with the red panda and the great horned owl, who were intentionally away from the flies and the carnage. The owl, who was now fully healed, was deliberating with the red panda about the possibility of a new attraction for the circus. No, it is real, I tell you, explained the owl. The whole house is made of gingerbread and covered in all manner of candy. The red panda tapped her fingernails on her closed teeth and then slowly asked, "Your friend Lenore lives there and will run checker games for me without a hitch?" The owl clicked his bill, making a familiar hollow sound, and spoke. "Indeed, it will be no extra work at all." Red Panda clapped her paws together and chittered. "Let's do it." The owl hooted. "I'm going to borrow tent stakes and ropes to get it. Plus, I have to see a certain stoat for help. I'll be back soon." "Okay, be safe, have fun," said Red Panda. The owl launched into the air in the direction of the sweet oat field and the apple orchard. The owl flew west through the old growth forest and past the candy cottage to which the chimney was happily puffing gray smoke. Inwards, that is, my dear friends. After a time, the owl reached the edge of the forest and the sweet oat field, to which he found Johann and Brightfire easy to locate. The owl requested an audience with Johann, and the owl explained the entire endeavor to the King of Stoats. The owl knew he needed help removing the candy cottage from the foundation, but was confident he could rig the ropes and fly it in one piece from the forest into the circus. In a show of good faith, the owl offered the remaining foundation of gingerbread and confections to Johann to use in his baking interests. The owl was confident that Lenore would agree that her house was to be torn up and divided as he saw fit. Johann agreed to employ the full League of Stoats for the project, but insisted, that they start at daybreak, since the sun was low on the horizon. The owl and Johann reached a gentleman's agreement. Then tarts were distributed, hogs were washed, and sleep was had by all. At dawn, the great horned owl, Johann, and the full League of Stoats made for the candy cottage deep in the old growth forest. Just before midday, they descended upon the clearing with Lenore's house. The owl silently lashed the entire house with great shipping ropes. Johann's voice boomed throughout the clearing, shouting orders to the League, who squeaked back in waves of confirmation. The owl tied and moored Lenore's house to a great upper branch, making it appear as under a tent. Johann again shouted orders to the Stoats forward and began nibbling furiously at the foundations of the candy cottage. The owl flew down from the great branch to the apex of the roof and sunk his talons into the gingerbread shingles to feel the vibration of the Stoats' progress. Now Stoats were chewing and collecting pieces of the foundation to be quickly replaced by fresh Stoats, ready to repeat the cycle of carrying and chewing, chewing and carrying. The owl could now feel tremors in the roof. He clicked his bill 3 times, puffed up his chest, and let out one deafening hoot that went deep in all directions into the old growth forest. Johann knew his cue and began shouting and chittering fresh orders to the Stoats, who now worked at a fever pitch, chewing and carrying and carrying and chewing. The owl moved again from the roof to the great branch and grasped the large knot of ropes in his feet and observed. Johann was heard shouting among the sea of chittering voices, "Keep it clean, recover every crumb." Amid the din, the owl heard the candy cottage begin to shift away from the foundation. He again puffed his chest, and this time let out 3 shrill hoots, so loud that they were unmistakable. Johann chittered and shouted fresh orders, and more Stoats surged forward. Johann made a large exaggerated wave to the owl, who rhythmically flapped his wings to keep tension in the ropes. The candy cottage was not yet freed. The Stoats found a new challenge in keeping track of their crumbs for the owl's downdraft. Johann once again gave a rally cry on the Stoats, who continued chewing and carrying and chewing and carrying. And then, with one fortunate down flap, the owl went airborne with the whole candy cottage high above the canopy of the old growth forest. An eruption of chitters arose from the forest floor. The owl was grateful for the Stoats' help, but now was not the time for his celebration. The owl flew over the forest canopy and headed toward the expanse that was Carmel's circus. At this very moment, my dear friends, the great horned owl was quickly realizing that he was not as clever as he once believed himself to be. This epiphany was arising from every muscle fiber and sinew that were screaming at him from carrying Lenore's candy cottage quite a long distance. The owl was swiftly approaching Carmel Circus, using the bright colors of the large oversized tents to guide him. The owl deftly and artistically placed the candy cottage in the grass just yards from the entrance of the Red Games tent and swooped forward, letting the large rope knot fall by the front door, all without disturbing a single spice drop or marshmallow on Lenore's house. Having seen the impressive aerial display in its entirety, Carmel and the bullfrog came running to congratulate the owl. Munchies and crunchies were shared around, and after the owl regained his strength, the bullfrog was washed, kisses given, stories read, and put to bed. For some time, life was robust and routine for the owl, Red Panda, and the bullfrog. Routine, that is, to the tune of the circus's newest attraction, was increasingly failing to meet the customers' expectations. What exactly was happening, my dear friends, was the blood-curdling screams of the customers following the tour through the candy cottage. The Red Panda trusted her nose and knew something was wrong with the gingerbread house. The next morning, she posed a question to the owl. "Why don't you finally introduce me to Lenore today, so we can all play a game of checkers?" she queried. "Yes, checkers." The owl clicked his bill. "I could use for a good game of checkers." Sadly, also the bullfrog overheard and decided to tag along in stealth, for he wanted to play checkers as well. The owl and the Red Panda were making their way to the candy cottage, deeply engrossed in conversation, so much as not to notice either the bullfrog following them or the gray smoke happily puffing inward the chimney. As the Red Panda opened the door and the owl followed, a stark reality set in quickly. A loud ringing in Red Panda's ears was set off as the owl began to gesture and talk. All she could hear were muffled words and ringing. As the owl described the warm stove and the table with the checkerboard, all Red Panda could see was a cold stove with a table and an overturned bottle and 2 glasses. At this very moment, dear friends, the bullfrog slipped in unnoticed. In the very next moment, dear friends, Red Panda turned on her heels in order to exit, and Lenore slammed the door shut. Lenore stood there, a tall gray smoke silhouette, and her face a hollow where mirth used to live. Caramel was rendered immobile and speechless until she heard the sound. My friends, that sound was the most pathetic croak from any frog, followed by hyperventilating. Red Panda saw the bullfrog at her feet and reacted. She scooped him up and dug deep gouges into the floorboards with her feet nails and flung the door open so hard the hinges twisted on the door and it crashed to the floor. Lenore looked at the owl with a simple pained half smile, and the owl shrugged his wings and just simply walked out. Outside in the grass, Red Panda was consoling and comforting the bullfrog. As the owl approached Carmel, Carmel said, while panting, "What have you done? You need to find a new place to live." With no contest, the great horned owl lifted his wings high and was airborne in the direction of the old-growth forest. The owl now resented the endeavor of moving Lenore's house, as he would no longer visit and play checkers. He wondered, however, if the stoats had cleared the foundation, so he headed deep into the forest where the clearing was to which he used to have Lenore's house. After flying for some time, the owl came upon a clearing. He could see the stoats indeed had cleared the foundation, except now that there was a bed of hot coals in the soil. The owl, now circling above this new and suspicious bed of hot coals, he wondered if this had really been underneath him every time he had visited his friend Lenore's during their checker games. The bed of hot coals was the exact shape of the foundation where Lenore's house had once stood, and it smelled of burning wood and sulfur. The owl found this both noxious and inviting. The owl stopped circling and took a perch on a very high tree limb. Just then, an ear-splitting thunderclap ripped across the sky, but the owl noticed that the sky was absent of the surefire train of lightning afterwards. Then, two more severe and terrible thunderclaps tore across the sky as if they threatened to rip the sky open itself. His ears throbbing, the owl thought he heard a fourth thunderclap, but immediately realized it was an earthquake that was emanating from the bed of hot coals in the forest floor. As he could see the coals dancing wildly, he felt the vibration in the tree limb he was perched on. At this moment, my dear friends, verily I must pause to inform you of some facts about our friend the great horned owl and his immediate surroundings. The owl is in the center of his home, the old-growth forest. Most of the trees grew very close together and were very tall. The tree the owl is perched on is 140 foot tall, and the tree branch he's on is about 100 feet from the ground. This time of year there is rarely any rain, and the entire forest floor to canopy is dry and crispy. The character you are about to meet is nothing more than a messenger. This new character wishes no harm to the owl, only to deliver the message it was charged to bring. As I said before, the forest is the owl's home, so imagine how the owl must feel right now. With that, my friends, it is time for us to press on. Then, with no warning, there was an eruption from the bed of coals, sending brimstone and wood embers flying in all directions. A great beast, with the body of a serpent, rose to meet, flushed with the canopy of the forest on top of its head, and its massive face rose level with the tree limb upon which the great horned owl was perched. The great beast had 4 horns upon its head, 2 high and set back, and 2 on each side of its head near its temples. All 4 horns were thick and twisting, like those of an Argali sheep. The beast's eyes were offset diagonal almond shaped with vertical green slits like a cat's, and were bioluminescent green. The beast had no nose, but inside its mouth was a visibly hot bed of brimstone and wood coals. The owl could feel the heat and smell the stench of the beast's breath. Inside the beast's mouth were teeth that resembled scythe blades. The owl was petrified, and the only thing he could think to say was from a book he once read, so he spoke it aloud. Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? At this moment, dear friends, I must beg for another pause. Before the great 4-horned beast speaks, I must impress upon you that there are 7 unique irregularities in the beast's voice that work in constant unison. In addition, the beast loves riddles. The first quality, ironically, is the imitation of the owl's own hollow clicking of his bill at random times. The second quality is that it is slow and rolling in cadence, as if imitating thunder itself. The third quality is that it is physically hot from the bed of coals in its mouth. The fourth quality is that it is velvety and rich like a cello. The fifth quality is confusing and invalidating because the beast chooses 1 word per sentence to pronounce in reverse, like a vinyl record being pulled backward. The sixth quality, and possibly even more confusing, is on every second and second to last spoken word there is a loud layered screech of rent metal. The seventh quality is that each first word and last word are spoken echoes within the last spelled in reverse of the first. So to summarize, my dear friends, the great horned beast speaks in deep, rolling, hot, clicking, reversed, and screeching echo speech. My friends, time to press on. The great beast inhaled and exhaled sharply, blowing hot brimstone and wood embers into the owl's feathers. The owl now felt very uncomfortable, much too warm and smelling and stinking. The beast then spoke.
Fool owl, I am Fugue, the harbinger, the rider of the pale Eroth.
That's hard to do. Wish to claim you, but you cannot, and there is none another emit. Owl, why are you so aloof? The owl was absolutely dumbfounded at the sheer magnitude of Fugue, not to mention the sounds and senses that came from Fugue's proximity. Before the owl could muster a response, Fugue spoke again. So you have to forgive me if I don't do the voice right because it's training and it's difficult, but hopefully you get what I'm trying to say. Deified owl, what in your life do you place over one to make things some deified? The owl swallowed hard, and only 3 words came to his throat. Oh, dear God. Fugue inhaled and exhaled sharply directly at the owl, but this time the beast's voice was not a hot garbage train wreck, but deep and rich as 4 cellos playing in harmony. You believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder. Fugue snorted, and large wood and brimstone embers flew into the owl's feathers, which became singed. Fugue now spoke in the original deep rolling, hot, clicking, reverse screeching echo. Taco Cat, owl, Taco Cat. The owl was so very confused he didn't recite. He just started screaming and panicking. What? I don't even understand. What did I do? Fugue responded, never odd or even. The owl screamed again. What? Never odd or even, Lowell. Never odd or even. The owl now reached the top pitch of his lungs and explained, oh my God! Fugue snorted again, blowing embers into the owl's feathers, but spoke in the rich 4-cello voice. He delivers the afflicted according to their affliction and opens their ear by adversity. The owl's bill was slack open as he whispered, God. Fugue replied again in the deep, rich cello voice. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs his heart. Fugue inhaled and exhaled sharply, but turned his head skyward and blew wood and brimstone embers upward, which caught the canopy directly above them ablaze. Fugue now spoke in the hot, screeching echo voice. Never odd or even. The owl blinked into the intense heat. Fugue continued, Reviver, owl. Your character saw why it was that Lenore let you win or lose at checkers. Her game was a deception. She was not human, but a gray mouse. Enigmani, you gray-horned owl that could not catch a simple gray mouse. Indeed, Reviver. Fugue reared back his great long serpent body and began to belly laugh and spin wildly. Wood coals and brimstone began to spew forth from his mouth, catching nearby trees alight. The old-growth forest was an overcrowded, dry tinderbox. Each tree that Fugue set fire to set each neighboring tree on fire in succession. Fugue continued to spin and laugh and spew fire and brimstone until it finally withdrew back down into the earth. The owl's eyes were blinded by smoke, and his throat was choked by brimstone. But he did understand that he had 2 options, perish or fly. Disregarding his stinging eyes and burned wings, the owl pushed off hard and flapped desperately, wanting to clear the canopy. The owl was fighting for his life and being forced to abandon his lifelong home, all in one fateful twist. As the owl gained altitude and cleared the canopy, the air was fresher and he could now see the burning devastation. The owl estimated that within the hour, the entire old-growth forest would be ablaze. The owl now felt something he rarely felt in the past. Contentment. The owl lived in the apple orchard next to the sweet oat fields. He spent much time with his friends, Autumn and Brightfire, the Clydesdales, the little hogs, Johann and the evil chicken, and the entire League of Stoats. The owl also traveled over the ashen wasteland that was the forest to the circus grounds to visit Carmel the red panda, the little bullfrog, and Cinnamon, the red panda, who had become lost but found his way back to the circus. Cinnamon had acquired a large diagonal whip scar across his face that made him look ominous and scary, but Cinnamon was gentle as could be. And now, my friends, you know the tale of how the great horned owl never again chased gray mice.